Well, thank you everyone for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much to our guest today, Kimberly Lechnick. Thank you so much. We had met through the Go Giver Success Alliance, and I am just constantly floored with the people I meet through that amazing network, hosted by Bob Berg, inspired by his book, The Go Giver. And Kimberly here, she is a relationship growth strategist. And I know that sounds like, whoa, those are really amazing and big words. And I'll let her explain a little bit more on what that means. Because when she told me, I was just like, my mind was blown. I was like, this is such an amazing way to look at relationships. And she is so passionate about supporting women in life, in business, investing in themselves, investing in their relationships. And I'm so honored and grateful that she has taken the time today. So thank you so much, Kimberly, for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you. So I would love for you to expand a little bit more. You've been doing this for about 25 years already, which is so incredible. So congratulations. That is an amazing feat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to kind of go back. So I've over 25 years supporting children and family. And you and I were talking about this idea of living in your purpose. So for
Yes.
me, it's each and every single one of us, we're born with unique talents and gifts, right? And we were born with these unique talents and gifts. We were born in a specific shape, right? And I believe that we're on this journey, right? We're on this beautiful journey called life to live out our purpose. That is why we are ultimately here. And so to be able to really own that and be living it is an absolute pleasure because when I first started the journey, I didn't know. I just thought that, hey, I was living this life and these experiences. And it wasn't until later on in my journey that I realized, wow, there's two important reasons why we're here. One is when we're born, and two is when we find out.
Wow. Yeah. Your mic has been cutting out just a little bit, so I want to make sure that you are actually finished. I think that is such a powerful statement. I feel like I have chills just thinking about this because our life's purpose, I mean, we spend so long trying to find it. Do you have anything to say maybe about people who they're not sure how to find maybe that ultimate life's purpose, but maybe they find like something is kind of okay, but how do they know for sure if like, okay, this is something I should dedicate more than 2 minutes to? Like, this is something I should dedicate a little bit more time to. Do you kind of have anything to say to that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what I love to start out doing with my clients is taking a look at what those core values are. And I have actually like a little bundle that where we go through the workbook and we go through it and we kind of really identify like what core values are really resonating with me. So, like for me, one of my top ones is growth. And from my life story and from how I live, you can really feel into that because I love it. A life without growth to me would be not so good.
Right.
So I think it starts with really identifying those core values and then really honestly grounding into those values, looking at them, journaling them, and really kind of taking a look at where in your life these are showing up. Because ultimately, when you're living within your purpose, when you're living according to these core values, they are showing up. You may not just sit really grounded wise and really take a moment to think about them.
I think that is so amazing. Because I'm about 19 now, and I've grown up obviously in my generation. And I think something that is so important that there's not a lot of stress on is those core values, like you mentioned. And I was just discussing with some friends, about dating, about relationships, and they were mentioning, they're like, oh, I can never date someone. I can never be like friends with someone who doesn't like who isn't open to like this type of music. And I was like, I feel like that's a great way that you know your own interests, but I feel like those can also differ from values. And I think identifying your core values is so important. I think sometimes we just forget what exactly is our core value. How would you kind of identify that core value?
Well, you kind of look at your experiences. So
Hmm.
sometimes, especially when you're talking about, younger generations, when I go back and I think about what I was like at 15, 16, and 17, I look at my children, right? They're not necessarily going to actually know them right off the bat. It's something that happens when we are living this thing that we call life, and we live our lives, and then we just kind of really take a journal. And I highly recommend journaling, because when you're journaling out your experiences, one of the things that you can do is you can find patterns to what you're journaling, and that can be an absolute gift to you, because you can say, I see this showing up a lot in my life. Like, Hmm. I came from a family, let's use faith for example, because we were talking about that before we got on. I, grew up with this, but is it resonating with me?
Hmm.
Right? Is it resonating? Do I live it? What does it mean to live? If we can expand that and say spiritually,
Sure.
what does my spiritual life look like? What are my belief systems? What do I
Hmm.
believe? Because oftentimes I think when we are growing up, we can veer from those beliefs that were there all the time, right? So we can
Yeah.
veer from how we were reared, and but we can come back to those, right? But it's life is a journey. It's about that exploration and learning about yourself and learning who you are as a person. And when you learn who you are as a person, you will find those values. They will come.
That is a great way. And actually, I'm so glad that you mentioned because I have been falling off my journaling and I've been meaning to get back to it every night. I'm like, oh, I should do it in the morning when I wake up. I'm already in bed, so I won't do it. But this is a great reminder. So I will do this the minute we get off the call. So thank you for that reminder because I absolutely love journaling. I also love going back in the past and I'm like, how was I 6 months ago? I can't remember, but my paper will tell me.
I love that. I love that so much, because I think that one of the things that I find that's missing for today is that we're not valuing our words, right?
Yeah.
And we're not putting pen to paper as much as we should, because when we put pen to paper, things are happening in our brain. There's connections that are being made. It's not the same when I take my fingers and I'm typing on the computer, right? That those same connections are not being created. So it's very, very important to find time to write. And I'm so happy to hear that you do make time for that in your life.
I absolutely love it, and I completely agree. I have like five notebooks stacked up, and I have all my to-do lists on like just pieces of paper. And I had told, I was in a group, and I was just mentioning how I was just loving like my little post-its and my notes, and gentleman unmuted. He's like, "Oh, like why do you do it physically? Why not just do it virtually? Like do it on Google Docs or something?" I was like, "I don't know. I like looking at my post-it that says a latte to do today. So I like to write it on there and have
Love
my
it.
shopping list and have my daily to-do list. I just think it's very enjoyable."
I love it. And I love it. And you are, again, when we talk about our relationships and caring for ourselves, and I can talk about this for hours, but when we're doing that, we're creating connections in our brains. We're creating new neural pathways. And that's really, really important to us. Not necessarily just, I know that young people think, oh, you just want me to learn more at school. No, it's so much more than that. It wires your brain to be able to play musical instruments. It wires your brain to do complex tasks physically. It's just so, so important. And you're really going to love it later on in life, because your brain is going to be that much stronger for it.
Yeah, that is a great way to put it. I appreciate it. And I would love to kind of, I guess, change the topic, but not because this is the topic of the podcast. But I would love to know, because you had mentioned that you had really gotten into everything when you were about 15, which I think is really incredible. I've been working with my dad since I was a kid. And before that, I worked for my family's business, a Chinese restaurant. So I've been working here and there, just lightly stuff on the weekends since I was a kid. So I'd love to know, is there anything that you would say, kind of looking back on your experience, either since you were 17, any experiences you learned, or do you think there's any advice that, 17-year-old Kimberly would be dying or would love to hear?
Give grace. Give grace to your family. They're raising you. Ultimately, they love you. They may do things that you may not agree with. They may do things that don't make sense to you. But in the end, they're on a journey too. They're on a journey, they're learning, they're human, and they're imperfect. One of the most powerful lessons that I learned was when I really understood that my mom wasn't necessarily angry at me. She had experienced hurt and hurt people. And in those moments, when she is in that state, seeing her as a little infant child in her mother's arms, as innocent as all of us, can see the humanness in her. And I do that often with others in my life that I encounter that seem to be carrying a big pain body. And I'm very concerned for the mental health of our younger generations. And I feel that when you are going through your struggles, they are real. They are absolutely real. Don't let no one dismiss them. Don't let no one discount them. Reach out. Reach out to people in your life, whether it's a school official or someone in your life that can support you, can give you what you need for that time being. But have that thought in the back of your mind. My mom and dad really truly do love me, but there's something that happened to them.
I absolutely love that and adore that message because I'm also a huge advocate for mental health. I've had anxiety, like I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder when I was about 11. So I've just been a huge advocate for just letting people talk. And something that I feel so honored and so grateful to learn is that people and relationships are very nuanced. And there's so many sides to every person. And you are not always going to see every side, but you know that they're there. And it is so possible to give grace to those people because there's just so much that you will never know going on behind closed doors. And as someone, like I'm not, I'm kind of a hypocrite sometimes. I don't love sharing about my struggles, right? But just because I don't tell someone doesn't mean that they're not there. And I think what you had mentioned was so powerful that we should be able to speak up for ourselves and also recognize it in others that, there just might be something going on. I know at the end of the day, like you had mentioned, your mother still loves you. There's just some stuff that happened that you couldn't control, that she couldn't control. But you still love her and she loves you. And I think that is such a powerful lesson that I know so many people, practically everyone, can relate to with some person that they love in their life.
Can I add something else to that?
Of course.
Because in that moment, we have an opportunity to be the victim or the victor. So you have to say that to yourself.
Yeah.
Do I want to come from the state of victimhood? Or do I want to be a victor? I want to just bring that back to when I was a young person and I got that opportunity to work in the local childcare industry at age 15.
Mm-hmm.
I had a choice. I could have chose no. I could have chose that no, I don't want to do. I chose yes. I chose myself. And I say to you and everyone that may be listening, choose yourself. Choose yourself. It's hard sometimes. It's hard sometimes, especially when you're growing up and you're learning about the world and you're learning about life. But choose yourself. I'm telling you, I'm living proof. I'm living proof. It's well worth it.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. There was a quote that one of my mentors had told me. She said, "Bet on yourself," and it's so simple, just a few words, but oftentimes I find the simpler the words, the more impactful they can be, the more you'll remember them, and the more that you'll live for them. So that is such a great message, and I appreciate your time today, Kimberly. Is there any last thing you'd kind of like to throw out there before we wrap it up? I've just had such a splendid time today.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you so much for the invitation,
Yes.
and it's just been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it so much.